Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and it is time once again for Tuesday Morning Left Guard with former Minnesota Viking Jeremiah Sirles. And Jeremiah, I've been on a bit of a run lately where breaking news happens right before the podcast
That's helpful.
and not after. And I don't know if this falls under the category of breaking news, but J.J. McCarthy has spoken. And he went on the Rich Eisen Show. I guess there's a Michigan connection there with Rich Eisen and J.J. McCarthy. So to start the show, I have Kevin Seifert's transcription of it on my phone, and I'm going to read it. Thanks, Seifert, for watching and transcribing the interview. Appreciate you doing the work for me. So here is what J.J. McCarthy had to say about his last year. He said, it's been really hard. I'm not going to lie, straight up. And on him and Kevin O'Connell's conversations about 2025, J.J. McCarthy said to Rich Eisen, our conversations have just been about nothing but the greatest thing for the Minnesota Vikings. At the end of the day, there are a lot of things that certainly are above my pay grade and some things above his, which is kind of interesting. And he goes on to say he's the one with the pen last on the field, and that's all I know, referring to O'Connell. All I can ask is for a fair opportunity. That's the one thing I feel like everybody's given, and it's fundamental. When money gets involved, things get complicated, and reps get skewed, and there's different things that come into the whole political world that everyone talks about. But I really just want to focus on controlling what I can control. My feelings don't matter. I'm not getting any grace. There's no sympathy. This is the big leagues. So those are J.J. McCarthy's comments. Jeremiah, your reaction?
Well, I'm glad the last part of that makes me feel good that he understands, like, it doesn't matter. I was a first round pick. Like, all of that, I have to show out. No one's going to feel sorry for me, right? The streets littered with talent from the NFL that just didn't pan out. It's littered with it. And he understands that. The interesting things that stand out to me there are the things of the above my pay grade thing, because for me, that means KOC is kicking the blame and kicking the can away of like, listen, I think if it was up to me, probably have you be my penciled in starter for 2025, right? But the cap guy like Brzezinski and, Kwesi, those guys, they're going to have to figure all that out upstairs. And then I'm just going to, I just coach, right? I coach the players that are given to me, right? That sounds like he's trying to hedge a little bit to keep McCarthy happy, but also not just like, you're the guy. We're coming in 2025. It's your show, bud. Right? He's hedging a little bit there to protect himself and also protect JJ a little bit too.
Well, you know what I couldn't help but think of there, and I just want to acknowledge that reading into this comment is unfair. It's wrong.
It's not though. It's almost the off season,
okay.
Dude. We're about this is the time of year where you have to just start digging, and like you don't have weekly storylines of coaches and players fighting, and like this is where you make your money, Matthew. The off season.
It is, but as a journalist, I feel it's important to acknowledge that before I go down this road, because he didn't say it to me and I didn't get a follow-up. So I would have liked to have asked what you mean when you say some are above his head. I went to who is above Kevin O'Connell. It's not Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. At absolute best, they're even, and I don't think that's really the case at this point. Kevin O'Connell just got the contract. We still don't have one for the general manager. Its contract is one of the most expensive, at least reportedly, in the NFL. So we're talking about the 14-win coach, all that sort of stuff. He wields the biggest sword, except for who? The folks who write those checks.
Mr. Wilf.
Exactly. Wilves, if you will. And so one thing I thought of here is something that one of my favorite podcasts on PFF used to say all the time about big decisions in the NFL. General managers control roster number 2 through 53, and owners control number 1, which is quarterback. If the Wilfs want Sam Darnold to be their quarterback in 2025, Sam Darnold will be their quarterback in 2025. And I don't know how you hear that comment and think, why would he say someone is above Kevin O'Connell's pay grade when referring to this situation? And it does not read like this comment, like, oh, I'm the guy now. Sam's leaving. Best of luck to him. And JJ's here. It doesn't really read that way.
No, I didn't read it that way either. And I actually saw this came up before we were going to record. So I actually kind of went through and read it. And nowhere in there did he say, like, it's my show, right? Nowhere did he plant his flag also, which I thought was interesting. That could have been a moment for him to say, you know what? I'm excited to take this year by the horns. I'm excited to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings. Like, this was a moment for him to plant a flag and say, I'm back. I'm good. It's my time. But the comment in there of, he said, what's best for the Minnesota Vikings, right? That's a conversation that's had that there was no promises given to J.J. McCarthy. Probably because, like you said, we don't know what they're doing with Sam Darnold, right? And when you have to make a decision and you know that JJ's going to be on my team no matter what, right? JJ's not going anywhere. Sam Darnold might be going somewhere, or he might be on my team. I have to make sure that I keep JJ somewhat happy and also keep him a little bit grounded, because if I just turn this thing over to him right now, who knows what's going to happen, right? Competition is great, right? Competition breeds greatness. I say that all the time. Everyone needs competition, especially the quarterback position, until you're the dude, right? Matt Stafford doesn't need a quarterback competition in August, right? But if you're Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy, you want to have that, hey, I don't know whose show it's going to be next year. It's one of your two. So I'm going to keep you both on this kind of level playing field until we get through it. Now, that all said, JJ did react a little bit to money, reps, politics. That's as true as anything in this league, right? If that wasn't true, guess what? Aaron Rodgers would be out right now, but they're going 49 million in dead cap. Yeah, I think he's going to stay, right? So Darnold comes with a big extension. We all know it's Darnold's job, right? I mean, that's no secret. If you extend him for 2-3 years with a lot of, 100 million guaranteed, it's obviously Sam Darnold's job. So I think that they still don't really know what they want to do with Sam Darnold. And I think a lot of that is due to JJ McCarthy's health.
Now, let me also add that JJ McCarthy, this is my observation from our handful of interviews with him at the podium and so forth, is a very sharp dude. He does not handle press conferences like a 22-year-old. He handles them. This is one of my first observations. I said to one of the people with the Vikings, I was like, I think we just did an interview with a 28-year-old veteran quarterback, the way that he handles himself, which could mean that all of these words are just him making sure that he is not talking in definitive type of language about himself being the quarterback. Because if I were working with him, and I know the Vikings have very good, they have very good PR people. They're sharp. If I'm working with him, I'm saying, here's the key to an interview like this. You don't really want to come off as, hey, Sam's out, I'm in. Like, you don't want to come off that way at all. And he also might not have the answer yet. He might not himself, because I don't think as soon as the season ends, KOC picks up his phone and says, JJ, you're the guy. Even as bad as it was, and even though every Vikings fan would have picked up the phone and called them and said, JJ, you're the guy, you just don't know that. And as they go through this offseason process, they don't have all the answers in terms of their meetings and their salary cap situation and their free agents and everything they're going to do. They have not gone through that likely yet, depending on their schedule, but teams usually do it right before the combine. So they're kind of locked into their goals at the combine. So they may not have worked this out yet. And O'Connell can say to JJ McCarthy, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. So just make sure that you're coming in, locked in, ready to go. And I've even thought that it was, and this sounds crazy, but I've thought that it was possible that they bring back Darnold and they have a camp competition. And if McCarthy wins it, they trade him to whatever pathetic quarterback team there is, because I promise you there will still be pathetic quarterback teams. I saw Kirk today saying, oh, my elbow was hurt during the season. I could still throw great. He's like, Kirky knows, buddy. There's no quarterbacks out there. He knows someone's calling.
Yep.
He's letting them know it's going to be healed. See? Oh yeah, I'll be good to go.
He's got to do, what was it? The tennis court video last year where he was showing that his Achilles was okay. Like, oh, that was timed well right before free agency. Big brain.
He is a wizard. He is a mastermind, and his agent as well. But not the point. I think that this is not resolved. And if you're McCarthy, what you're trying to say is that you've probably been prepared by Kevin O'Connell for lots of different outcomes here, because there are not just one avenue, tag and trade. Transition tag's been brought up. And maybe you can help me explain that to the audience as an agent, the transition tag. But when it comes to even the insiders, the Pelisseros, the Fowlers, they're all kind of saying, we don't really have an answer yet from the team which way they're going to go. So McCarthy himself may not have this answer yet. Folks, I'm trying a new thing in order to stop going to fast food restaurants all the time with my busy schedule. It is called Tempo Meals. Tempo is a weekly delivery service that delivers chef-crafted meals from a dietitian-approved menu fresh to your door. Their perfectly portioned lunches and dinners take all the guesswork out of eating as well. They are fully prepared and can be heated up in the microwave in just 3 minutes. A couple of meals that I've got coming my way this week are the sweet and sour meatballs, the honey glazed pork chop, and the tender chipotle sirloin. Those are just my choices, though. There are dozens and dozens of options, and I figured it all out in about 5 clicks. So, for a limited time, Tempo is offering my listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/purple insider. That is tempomeals.com/purple insider for 60% off your first box. Tempomeals.com/purple insider. Rules and restrictions apply.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. I think that and it's smart not to give him an answer, right? Don't let him go out and say something that's going to make a ton of questions for the organization, right? You want to give him enough information that he feels informed, but you also want to protect the organization above all. And I think that's a message from Ziggy on down of like, you will not put this organization in peril for something you say in the media. So we just aren't going to share certain things. And you're exactly right. The timing of all this with the Sam Darnold thing will come to a head at the combine, right? Free agency starts in March. It starts in Indy. Right. And everyone knows that. Every meeting at the combine is, hey, I have a free agent this year. What would you think? Right. Like, and that's all like, and so I promise you, Sam Darnold's agent, first meeting, day one of the combine, will be with the Minnesota Vikings. And what's your plan? What are you thinking? And will you let me, right? And that's the great thing. He's a free agent. So he doesn't need permission from the Vikings to go out and shop. Right. And so there's two school of thoughts if I'm Sam Darnold's agent. One, very first meeting, right? What are your thoughts? Or I'm not meeting with them until the very last day. And then I'm showing up with like, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I have. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Is it a bluff? Is it not? Here's what I have in front of me. What are you guys going to do? The Vikings have to make a decision by March 17th, I think it is, of figuring out free agency wise or not. And man, I'm fascinated of how they're going to try and string this thing together, because after we got done with our podcast last week, I was doing it and my partners were around me as I was saying it, and it prompted us into like an hour-long discussion of what would we do as Sam Darnold's agents. And it was a pretty fun thought experiment to go through and how we would come down to it. But so much is dependent on what the Minnesota Vikings want to do with him.
What is it? The 4th is the franchise tag deadline, which I think will show their cards as if they're going to tag him. But that does not tell us if they're going to trade him or not. After
free agency begins on the 10th.
Right. And I think that as far as tagging him, that has to be something that they do almost no matter what. It's really just how you tag him. If you transition tag him, it's less money. So where you'd be more comfortable with, okay, nobody comes in with an offer. But if someone comes in with an offer, they can just have him and not have to give you compensation. Correct. Unlike the non-exclusive, which is what most people do, but you get 2 first-round draft picks. Well, no one's going to give up 2 first-round draft picks for Sam Darnold. So the transition tag does make some sense as a possibility, but I would love to know. I mean, you said that you and your partners were having this conversation. Yeah. Take me inside that. I mean, if you guys are in charge of Sam Darnold, what's your thought process here?
Yeah, I think the number one thought process, like you do with any free agent, is you have to see what the actual market is, right? Because if you come in and you price yourself too high, right, then the Vikings will be like, we're not paying that. Like, here's the tag. But if you can go out there and actually find, hey, this is where his market is right now, right? This is where we think between this number and this number from all our meetings at the combine, all the teams that we've had, and you usually bolster that second number up a little bit, right? And you say, this is where his market's at. Is this where you see him? Right? Is this where you see him? And if that's the case, and if they agree, then you go, great, extension time, right? If they don't agree, then you're really going, okay, then I'm going to force you to tag me, and then we're going to and then we'll just be with you guys forever, right? But I think the way that they need to go about it for the Vikings wise, and this is where Chris was great. He was saying you need to force their hand to explain what the next 2 years look like, right? You need to really not just get, hey, what's 2025's plan? You need to say, hey, Rob Brzezinski, Kwesi, KOC, tell me the plan for 2025 through 2027, right? What is your plan? Because that will be very telling of the dollar amount in which they want to pay Sam Darnold. If it is just a truly rent-a-year quarterback again, right, then you say, okay, then you must pay me my $40 million guaranteed on the tag. Or if you say, hey, we don't know where JJ's at right now, there's so many things, then, okay, well, let's talk an extension with some guaranteed money for 2 years here so that I can have security for my client with the injury protection piece of it and all of that. Because that's why players really don't like the franchise tag, is you lose injury protection, right? If you're on a multi-year deal and you get hurt and you don't finish the end of that year, you have injury protection going into the following year if you're not healthy. If you're on a 1-year deal, you don't have that injury protection, right? So that's another big reason why you don't love the franchise tag from the agent's point of view.
So let's just do a thought experiment here. And I'll ask everyone to try not to turn off the podcast with rage if you can. It's only a thought experiment. It's not real. Let's just say that Mark and Ziggy Wilf said, look, we understand how much you love J.J. McCarthy. We love him too. We've seen the Packers sit Jordan Love for a couple of years. And here's our biggest priority. It's being in this race again next year. And we don't believe with a first-time quarterback that we can actually get there. So we want Sam Darnold to be the quarterback. I think that a bit of the conflict from the Vikings perspective is exactly what you laid out, which is, if you're the Vikings, here's what you'd love to do. If you're forced by ownership to bring back Darnold, you'd love to sign him to a 3-year contract for $125 with $70 guaranteed, and the first year cap hit is $9. And so the next year, here's Trey Smith, Tevin Jenkins, all sorts of Oso Digizawia. You got everybody. DJ Reed. This is an all-star team, okay? For 1 year, and then you're going to trade Darnold. But if you're on Sam's side and you represent him, you're like, now hold on. Where are you trading him? Now, maybe a resolution could be a no trade list that he could give his 20 teams that he would not be traded to. And it's a limited no trade clause that allows him to say, okay, I don't mind being traded at the end of this thing because you want to go to McCarthy. However, I want to have some control about where I'm traded. That to me is about the closest thing you could get to a resolution. Otherwise, I'm saying, no, if you guys are going to play my guy for 1 year and trade him, then of course I'm not just going to agree to that and end up in Cleveland.
Exactly, right? You want to have some power. And that's the issue right now, is Sam doesn't have a ton of power right now. The power he has is, if you don't want to franchise tag me because it's too expensive, I'll just walk. I'll just go to free agency. Right. And I don't think the Vikings want to lose him for nothing. You can't just lose Sam Darnold because you brought him into quarterback rehabilitation. You brought him all the way through the 12 steps, and maybe he stumbled on step 12, but you still can get something out of him based off of the market of, it's not a good quarterback market from a free agency standpoint and from a draft standpoint. So there's going to be teams that 100% are looking for a starting quarterback. If you're the Vikings and you have full faith in JJ, get a second round pick out of him. Be willing to do that, because also I think that's important. If you franchise tag him and you trade him before the season, you incur zero amount of that on the cap, right? That's a big piece of this, right? If you extend him, that signing bonus hits the cap, right? That is part of the cap hit. So if you want to save as much money as possible and also get the most value out of Sam Darnold, the best route to go is put a freaking franchise tag on him, make a quarterback competition through camp. If JJ wins it, you trade him. If Sam Darnold wins it, then you keep him, right? And that's the way you rent a quarterback for a year. But I don't think that in his camp, I don't think that an extension with the intention to be a 1 year rent a quarterback thing just doesn't make sense for Sam and his team.
Now, the trouble with trying to franchise tag him, and this is, again, only in a world where the ownership has demanded that Darnold remain the quarterback, is if you have this quarterback competition in camp and McCarthy weighs 225 and he looks great, and you're like, this isn't JJ McCarthy, this is John Elway, folks. So we want to move on from Sam Darnold, and the Raiders have Mac Jones as their quarterback. they still have to have $40 million in cap space to make that acquisition, or they have to have ownership that's willing to restructure contracts and move money and put cash on the table. And this is what's always been good about the Vikings ownership, but not every owner is like this to say, all right, we're going to convert this to a bonus, but that means out of your wallet, onto the table and into that player's hands, which not everyone's willing to do. So you could get caught holding the bag, where if you get to the end of camp and every team's like, yeah, we either don't want to do it for Darnold or we just don't have the cap space and we don't want to make it, then you're going to stick with Mac Jones. And the Vikings end up with a $40 million backup quarterback and a bunch of contracts from free agents that they've pushed down the road. And so there is also this other scenario where the ownership says, no, we want Darnold to play no matter what, 2025, we want to run it back. We think we can compete for a Super Bowl with 2 guards and everything else the same. Okay, that's great. Maybe they're guard guy. Like I always make fun of guard guy on the show because for the last 9 years of me covering this team, there's been a lot of discussion about the guard position. But if they think, oh, just a little better pass protection and we're right there, right? Then what if McCarthy is better in camp, but KOC feels like he's got to stick with Sam Darnold because that was the edict from ownership? And this is where the communication between the front office coaches and the ownership, what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been good at from day one is selling a vision for this team. His vision for this team was a rookie quarterback contract. I spend all your money in the free agent and get all the players. That was his deal from day one. And I've got to think that he still wants that to be executed pretty badly here.
Yeah, I think so too, because that was the long-term vision, right? And that goes back to, are you willing to blow up the long-term vision off of an 19-game performance by Sam Darnold? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And only the Vikings do know the answer to that. I just worry that they're going to make the same mistake they did with Kirk Cousins, where Sam Darnold has a little bit of the grass isn't greener with J.J. McCarthy feel to it. And they're going, okay, well, we know what we have with Sam. Are we willing to bet that J.J. is going to be equal to that or not? And ultimately what it comes down to, again, from ownership is butts in the seats, right? Now, the Vikings fan base is incredible. You're always going to have that. But there is this fear of, if we move on from Sam and JJ looks like Caleb Williams and we win 7 or 8 games next year, what's going to happen to the community? What questions are going to be asked? And like merch sales, like all that plays a factor in this as well. The good news is if you are end up paying Sam Darnold $40 million for the franchise tag, it's not like it was a crazy cap hit compared to what this year was, right? And that's the luxury of having the rookie scale quarterback on that piece. Now, you don't want to waste that window. And now you're 2 years into what you thought was going to be a rebuild with the rookie scale quarterback, but it also isn't a giant $150 million looming thing down the road over the top of your head.
And this is exactly the point that I've tried to make over the recent weeks since the end of the season is I am a lot less afraid of Sam Darnold being the quarterback next year than I think 98% of society. Because number one, I mean, they do have a more difficult schedule. I'm going to keep bringing this up because if you look at that thing, it's a beast.
Grinder.
And you never really know, but when you start looking at it and go, okay, well, the North, the NFC East, and the AFC North, I mean, this is just a lot of football teams that are good every single year. Philly's not falling off. Washington's getting stronger. Pittsburgh will still be tough in Pittsburgh. The Ravens, they're going to be good. I promise you the Ravens will be good next year. So there's a lot of...
Joe Burrow's not going anywhere.
That's right. That's right. Cincinnati changed DCs. They're going to put money into their defense. Burrow's still an elite quarterback. It's just not getting easier in the schedule standpoint. And also from a physical perspective, if I am them, I want to make sure J.J. McCarthy is fully ready physically to play 17 NFL games, a battle of attrition for 17 games before I put him out there. And that's why, because I think that this rookie contract thing still very much exists, even if he doesn't play his first 2 years. That gives you 2 full years of it, but also look at the way contracts are structured around the league. I promise you it gives you more like 4 years of it. When you look at even a Trevor Lawrence extension, a Justin Herbert extension, a Jalen Hurts extension, it's always more than that you can stretch it out. So now if we're talking 3-4 years of the ability to spend on free agents, work around that rookie deal, that's a long time. Well, everybody's still in their prime, the Grenards, the Darisaws, the Jeffersons, and all that, to have legitimate shots at winning the Super Bowl. So I'm less worried about it, but I would actually, you know what I'd be worried about is if Sam Darnold came out and didn't play well, and then it just turns into a circus. Because I've been watching back the 2010 season. I don't know how familiar you are with that. I know. I don't know. What else am I doing? So it just, with Favre coming back that year after 2009, it just became a circus. And things went wrong, and Sidney Rice didn't get surgery until the last minute, and he was the top receiver and all this stuff. Well, I don't have to tell you about a team that becomes a circus in 2016 around sort of a quarterback trade and all the things that were happening there. That's because then you may have franchise tagged Darnold, spent all that money, and then have it not go the way you thought in your mind. Oh, we just repeat everything and do a little bit better at guard, and then it all works. And if you go 8 and 9 anyway, then you just wasted everybody's time. And I think that should be the number one concern about just bringing him back, is if it doesn't go the same way that it did this year.
100%. I'm with you. Like, I don't think that if Sam Darnold's the quarterback of the Vikings next year, that Sam's going to be the guy the last 2 weeks, the entire year. He showed growth this year. I think he's still going to be a very competitive quarterback for whatever team he plays for next year. If it's the Vikings, I'm not concerned, but you're absolutely right. If you pay a guy $40 million, you almost expect more out of him than what he was last year for $10 million. It's a lot to ask Sam to repeat what he did this year. It's a lot to ask any quarterback to repeat and all. I mean, that's like asking Joe Burrow, like, you're going to go do exactly what you did this year again next year, right? And lead in touchdowns and yards. Like, it's just not a reality. But the problem is, the public perception is, when you pay a guy a certain amount of money, you expect him to elevate his game, right? And that's just not reality of the NFL. A guy gets paid because he's really good at the position. That doesn't just magically wave a wand and bibbity bobbity boo, now you're all of a sudden you're John Elway again. It doesn't work like that. And we have to understand that from our perspective. Is we stole Sam Darnold for $10 million this year. That was a steal. It was a great signing, great value, got a lot out of him. If we pay him 40, that doesn't mean he's going to be Josh Allen next year. It just doesn't. He is who he is. We just have to understand that there's going to be a roller coaster with Sam Darnold. I don't think he's ever going to be the steady Eddie, pillar of truth. We're good to go. He's not going to throw interceptions. That's just not the case with him. But that's not the case with 90% of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. You just have to understand that going forward.
Okay, what if I told you that they got 2 guards? Now, hey, I'm just saying, if they brought Darnold back and they did build an elite offensive line, because this was patchwork. I mean, this was Dalton Risner being thrown in there halfway through the season. I think Garrett Bradbury's a better fit for another team. I will maintain that he's a quality starting center, but I think for a deep drop back, triple, quadruple move to the wide receiver 30 yards down the field, that's hard for him. And left guard was an experiment that failed. Another tackle being moved to guard that didn't work out. Trey Smith and Tevin Jenkins arrive on campus at TCO Performance Center. Christian Darrisaw comes back 100% healthy. Is Sam Darnold just as good? Is he better? Can they run better? Can they be better? Like, there has to be some thought process and discussion in the room of, like, if we had protected him against the Rams, do we just win? Like, there are receivers down the field. If we could run the ball and average 4.8 yards per carry and run on 3rd and 2, do we just have a top 5 offense? And I think that the regression's coming in the form of the schedule. And also, you hit that many deep shots down the field, you're probably not doing it again.
No.
And that's 2009 to 2010 Favre, by the way. But you could see them talking themselves into it. Where do you think Kevin O'Connell stands on that? Like, do you think Kevin O'Connell as a head coach would be leaning toward the devil I know, and I just need to fix these things to make him better, or the draft pick I don't know, who I can spend more money on the overall roster on the defensive side and really stack this thing up around, but I've got to do a lot of work because I have to revamp the offense again for a whole new quarterback?
Honestly, I think it's the second part there. I think that with the contract extension now, he has a long-term view of this, right? If they didn't have his extension and he was coaching for his job, very different of I need to win right now, right? Brian Dable, right? Hey, we're going to keep you one more year, right? Then you're definitely going, I'm not trying to change too much here. I'm trying to stay in my lane. But with the contract extension and them giving him the keys to the car and saying, hey, build this the thing you way you want to go and be with it. I think he leans more towards the, hey, let's get our rookie in here. Let's build the team up around the Jeffersons and the Addisons and bolster that offensive line, get a good running back in here, like get the run game get going and allow J.J. McCarthy to develop with really good players around him and have that be the vision for the next 3-4 years instead of just this tunnel vision on what are we doing in 2025, right? Because if you get yourself in tunnel vision, you make mistakes. And you make mistakes that come back and haunt you 2.5, 3 years from now when you're going, we're 40 million over the cap, and now we have to cut one of our really good players because we just can't afford him, right? That's the piece that you kind of run into here. And so I think he's going to lean with the let's get some guards, let's get the run game, let's continue to keep our good talent. And if he had his druthers, I think he's probably going to JJ McCarthy.
Okay, before we get to what we originally wanted to talk about is a game of Talk Me Into.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do an abridged version of that. But what's after hearing JJ McCarthy talk, every new piece of information comes with me asking whoever's on the show with me, what's the percentage chance that Sam Darnold's the quarterback or JJ McCarthy?
I honestly give it a 50-50 shot. I really do. And so much of it comes down to this last 30 minutes of discussion of is it a tunnel vision approach of the Wilfs looked at KOC and said, I want to be playing in the Super Bowl next year? Or is it the long-term approach of let's build it so that we can build a Kansas City type dynasty for 26, 27, 28, 28, 29, right? You have to think long-term in the NFL. You have to. And so I really think that I don't know which way that they lean, but I do think it's a 50-50 shot on are we trying to win right now or are we trying to build for the future?
Okay. I am at 60-40 JJ McCarthy as the quarterback, but only 60-40. And, I guess everybody can leave in the comment section where they are. And that's not what you want, but what you think as far as percentage goes. And yes,
I know. Not with your heart. Go with your
head.
head.
Right. Go with your head.
Don't vote with your heart. Vote with your head.
I mean, I think most people would be leaning heavily toward McCarthy being the quarterback. Those comments don't change my mind, but they more sort of solidify me in I'm leaning toward it, but I'm not 100%. It kind of reminds me of last year where we listened to O'Connell do these interviews about Kirk. And with every interview, it was like, I think that he wants Kirk to sign a deal that's not as good for Kirk as Atlanta's going to give him. And that's what it sounds like he's saying. And how's that going to play out? But I was probably only 60% on Kirk leaving, 60, 70% at this time last year. So I think more information will present itself and kind of give us a closer idea of the answer. And a month from now, we will get a little more definitive stuff on the franchise tag.
We also are not, there's one more key factor here that we haven't really played into, which is what does Sam Darnold want? Right? Does Sam Darnold want to go to the Raiders? Or is he willing to say, you know what? I love Minnesota. I love KOC. I love throwing to the best wide receiver in the world. I love what's going on here. Like, I'm willing to work with you guys to stay here. Right? You never know from a player's perspective where their brain's at. And that's a key factor here of is Sam going to turn to his agents and go, I want money. Right. And I want my money now because I deserve that. And you never know when I'm going to play like this again. Or is he looking long term of I want to stay in Minnesota? I understand JJ's the guy, but I want to stay here and play for this team one more year or whatever it is. That's a factor that everyone has to guess at because we all won't know unless we're sitting in that meeting with Sam Darnold.
Well, now I have to follow up on that. What do you think Sam Darnold wants?
I honestly think Sam wants his bag, and I don't blame him. You were a first-round pick, right? You were supposed to be the guy. It never panned out, and now you have the chance to go make the generational type money. I mean, I get it. You made a ton of money being drafted in the first, but now you're talking about 40 a year, right? That's twice what you made as your rookie contract in 1 year. You got to make money while you can in this league because you never know when the opportunity is going to arise again.
I'd like to quote a great philosopher in answering this question. It's not about the dollars. It's what the dollars represent. Kirk Cousins.
Yes, sir.
It was, and I know Kirk was quoting somebody else that told him that it doesn't matter. Kirk said it. And it was something that hit so hard for me about so many things actually in your life. It's about like, even with friendships you have, it's like somebody doesn't show up to an event you're having. It's like, it's not about the fact that you couldn't come. It's about the fact that you no showed or something. Like, you can really apply this to a lot of stuff, but it's not about the dollars. It's what the dollars represent. A franchise tag for Sam Darnold represents, we like you, but this other guy, he's really what we actually want. And if I'm Sam Darnold, I just don't want that. I just do not want to play in a world where every bad game I have, over 17, every quarterback's going to have bad games. He'll probably have 5 that I get booed off the field every single time we go 3 and out. And I hear in the chants in the stands, J.J., J.J. Like, some people suggested that I want Darnold back. Like, that's what I want, as if I have like a care for what it doesn't impact me at all. I'll live my life the same way. So I don't want anything. I wanted to go to Philly and cover a playoff game again. So I did want that. But anyway, but here's what I do want for Sam: not to get booed off the field every time he has a bad 3 and out or an interception, I think it would be a very uncomfortable situation with the fans, because they are so sold on JJ McCarthy that you're going to get at every turn, every bad half where they don't score, JJ, JJ. People want McCarthy. They just don't want Sam Darnold. And that has to matter to him. I'm not wanted here. If I go to the Raiders, let's say they tag and trade, and then he signs an extension there, that means that Pete Carroll, one of the best coaches in NFL history, said, I want Sam Darnold as my guy for the next 3 years. He is our franchise quarterback. I am appreciated, and the fans are going to be happy to see me because they've been watching Aiden O'Connell play. And there's got to be real value in that.
I agree. I'm completely with you. The player doesn't want to always be looking over their shoulder. And when you're on a franchise tag, you have no future security in that state. And the young gun's sitting behind you. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're hearing it all the time. And I mean, we'll talk about it every week. Every media member will talk about it every week. It becomes the focal point. Kevin O'Connell has to talk about it every single week at the podium. Hey, is there any thoughts of going to JJ this week after a 3-point loss for Sam Darnold through 3 interceptions, right? There's so much of that comes with it that a long-term extension pretty much eliminates a lot of those conversations for the most part, but this franchise tag leaves it open to interpretation the entire year.
I'm not sure that any extension leaves it open with the fans. I mean, it does. You're right as far as the franchise go, where they say, hey, he's our guy or whatever, but you'd have to sign a 5-year deal for $50 million a year to actually convince someone that was really the case. And if they were 4-3 and he has a 3 interception game, we're going into that post game saying, is it time to play JJ McCarthy? I guarantee you, if he signs a 3-year deal, I promise you, we will do that. So, and the fans will boo him off the field and they'll be chanting JJ. And so I think if you're him, that there's almost no contract you could sign with the Vikings where that does not happen. That is in all reasonable. So for me, I would want, if I'm Darnold, to say, tag and trade me, sign and trade me, whatever you want to do. I want to be the Giants quarterback. I actually kind of would if I was him. Dable, Neighbors, they've got some stuff to work with there. I would actually think that would be a good location for him. So I
don't know if he can go back to MetLife.
Yeah.
regardless if he's wearing blue, I don't think he can go back to that stadium.
That's true. Although if you had the choice, if you're him, I would rather go where Malik Neighbors is and just be like, hey, this reminds me of another receiver. Yeah, I mean, this guy made some pretty bad quarterbacks look good in some games this year. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, all of this is going to play out over the next month, but there are so many moving parts to it. That's what makes it a fascinating decision for the Vikings. So real quick, rapid fire talk me into.
Yes.
Okay. I want you to talk me into the Vikings, rather than staying sort of the path, doing something NBA style of a trade. And it doesn't have to be Myles Garrett, a trade where we all go, whoa, the Vikings just did, huh? Not trade away your best player like Luka Doncic for not a very good return and ruin the future of your franchise. But like, something that would actually make sense. Talk me into them instead of just staying the course and signing some free agents, particularly at the guard position. Make it some big move.
I think the biggest move that they could make would be to trade one of the pass rushers that they got last year, right? To maybe a Van Ginkel or maybe even Grenard, right? If you're talking blockbuster, because they have so much faith in Dallas Turner that you do go and you trade for a Myles Garrett, for a Aiden Hutchinson, for that type of player, right? And you can name TJ Watt, right? Go down the name for like the impact edge, right? To trade one for the impact edge plus draft picks, right? Because we need draft picks in a major way, right? I think we have 4 right now for next year. It's not enough to build a future on. It just isn't. You need 5 to 7 draft picks every single year, because especially in that day 2, early day 3 range where you can get really good value add for those players. So I think that if I'm going to talk you into it, it's going to be, you're going to have to move one of your elite defensive edge players, because there's always a need for edge. You're not getting rid of your tackles, right? There's always need for edge, but you've got to get some draft pick capital return.
Yeah, Grenard would be untouchable to me. His age, his production, just like you've got one of those guys. He's not quite Aiden Hutchinson or Myles Garrett, but if you're talking about there's like a 3-guy Bosa, Hutchinson, Garrett first tier, this is tier 1B. That's where Grenard is. That's a pretty great place to live. Van Ginkel is interesting because he's fantastic. Is he going to repeat this last year? That would be very hard to do. Double-digit sacks, couple of pick sixes, second team All-Pro. If you're going to offer somebody up, it's him. But there's another part of that equation that you went a different direction. I thought you were going to go. Would you trade Dallas Turner if somebody came and asked? I think his value is too low. Like, you're not going to get the right value. Plus, you spent so much for him. It would be suspicious if someone got the phone call for whatever other team, and then, well, we're thinking about moving Turner. You'd be like, huh? Now, wait a minute. Why? Like, what's going on there that you're going to move him? But if he was a toss in to a Myles Garrett trade to get you over the hump, I would have to consider it.
Yeah. I mean, if and that was going to be my first talk me into with you, was the Vikings trade for Myles Garrett. Right. Talk me into that. They sell their soul that, hey, Myles Garrett could be the linchpin that we need next to Grenard or Ginkel, whoever. Like, what does that look like? And what are you willing to give up?
Okay. If you were the Browns, let me try this on you.
Okay.
Just put it on, snuggle into it, and see if it fits. There's one team that can offer the Browns a quarterback. It is the Minnesota Vikings. Let's say that he would agree. They find out he would agree to a 3-year deal, wants to play for Kevin Stefanski. So you tag and trade Darnold to the Browns along with, let's say Dallas Turner. I mean, it's going to have to be a lot. We're talking about the top 3 player in the league that's non-quarterback. And next year's second or something. Now, that's a lot to give up for the best player at his position in the entire NFL. But also, if you had Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Myles Garrett, I don't know how anybody in the world blocks you. And then here's Brian Flores being like, I still will blitz, actually. Would you do that trade if it was Turner, Darnold, and a second rounder from 2026?
100%. I'm 100% doing that. The only issue becomes, if you tag and trade him, they have to extend him because of the amount of money they already have in the quarterback room. Right. That's the part that gets sticky with if they pick up Sam Darnold. If you're eating $40 million on top of, what is it, 60 that Deshaun's making or whatever it is,
they would have to get rid of Deshaun's contract as part of this first. Like, they couldn't do it unless somebody was taking it, and then they're giving up draft capital, which is why they would want the young player and a draft pick.
Right. No, that all makes sense. If all the pieces moved, they are in desperate need of a quarterback in that phrase there. And the fact that Myles Garrett came out publicly and was like, I want out. I was like, oh, that's so sad for Browns fans. Right. But yeah, I think that that's definitely something that you have to consider. But I also don't know, again, that throws another wrench into the 5-year plan of the Minnesota Vikings of, if you take on another max player deal, mega contract, you're hampering yourself at other positions again. So I don't know if it's as realistic as we all hope it is because of just the implications that it would cause down the road.
Well, this is where the rookie quarterback contract for McCarthy would come into that equation. But my concern would be, and I just don't know what to think about this because Garrett's got pretty remarkable health, and every age curve does not apply to the top 1% of 1%. It doesn't apply to Saquon Barkley. It does not apply to Myles Garrett. However, historically, guys who have played in the league for this long do not have 7-8 years left to go. I mean, you got your Julius Peppers, Bruce Smith, there's a couple dudes, Reggie White, but I mean, for the most part, historically, you get to 30, your production starts to drift off. Even I saw a chart today of the best of the best in the last 20 years. Even Aaron Donald got to 30 years old and it was still unreal, but it wasn't quite the same as the guy's peak. And if he drops off by 10% and he's just really, really good and not astonishingly good, then you've given up a lot for him. But if you don't believe in Turner, which I'm not saying they don't, but if you don't, and it's a second round pick and a quarterback you were trading anyway, I'm willing to take the risk that, over the next 5 years, he might not be the same. I don't know if that's enough to get it done because another team might come with 3 first round picks and maybe you take that instead. But in a draft, the thing about this though, Stefanski has to save his job. And in a draft where these quarterbacks, I just don't see it as far as being elite prospects with Ward, Sanders.
The Senior Bowl was bad.
Stop trying to make Jackson Dart happen, please.
The Senior Bowl I was watching these quarterbacks. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad.
Jackson Dart will be drafted in the 3rd round. Okay, everyone, 3rd round. You're in 1st round, you're looking for franchise quarterbacks, not like he looks okay. So that is something that no other team can offer the Cleveland Browns. And that's what makes it somewhat interesting to me. I want you to, before we close the show, hey, the Super Bowl's this week.
Oh, yeah.
Patrick Mahomes is doing interviews at the Super Bowl. So is Travis Kelce. I want you to talk me into being really excited that a team won the Super Bowl. Excited for one of those teams. Something captivates you in the moment. You get welled up. You're so excited because this happened in the Super Bowl for that team. Talk me into feeling good about somebody winning it.
I've come to rationalize for myself that I will be excited for Joe Thuney. I will be ecstatic for Joe Thuney, a man that has won Super Bowls in New England. He's won Super Bowls in Kansas City. He got asked to move out to left tackle this year because they were a disaster. Picked up without a beat. In fact, stabilized the entire position. I will be very happy for that man. I think it solidifies his gold jacket. I think it's a chance for him to go down as one of the best to ever do it. A guy that's never been in trouble, never caused issues off the field, been looked at as an all-pro, one of the best players at his position, and now playing left tackle in the Super Bowl for the best quarterback with a chance to three-peat. I will be happy for the Kansas City Chiefs strictly for Joe Thuney.
I don't mind Taylor Swift. Just in general, like her music is fine. Doesn't change my life. Doesn't make me upset. And people getting mad. Oh, they showed a pretty pop singer celebrating a touchdown. Oh, I'm so angry. You're like, come on. There's way better things to be mad about in the world. For me, though, that's a joke. I don't care one way or the other. But greatness, it only comes around every so often. And when I was a child, Jeremiah, I rooted for the New York Knicks. And you know what MFer kept ruining all of my dreams of the Knicks winning? That stinking Jordan guy. And at the time, I was really pissed at him. I was like, stop it. You go play baseball. And then the Knicks still didn't win. But as time went on, I let it go. And I appreciated Jordan for his greatness. And I feel this way even with Tom Brady. Like as Tom Brady was doing, I was like, this smug Patriots, they're deflating footballs and just look at them, the Patriot way. It's so obnoxious. But then 10 years later, you're like, wow, that was unbelievable. And I think that if he wins another one, we are talking about just witnessing a sheer level of greatness that we have almost never seen in the history of the NFL. And if you don't appreciate that, I don't know what you're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the old Batman quote, like, "You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain," right? When he was taking on Brady, he was America's favorite person, right? He's gonna dethrone the king, right? Death to the king of Tom Brady. And now it's just completely flipped of everyone's like, "I'm tired of seeing this guy win." And I'm with you. I don't have to like the Chiefs. I don't have to love the Chiefs, but you have to respect Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, what they built. Brett Veach has done an amazing job as GM there, bringing the right kind of guys in, retaining talent, not being afraid to let a guy like Tyreek Hill walk out the door because it was what's best for the Chiefs building. So much respect for that organization. And yeah, to say when I was a kid, right, to look back and to tell my son, when I was doing Tuesday morning left guard, I watched the Kansas City Chiefs three-peat. I don't know if we'll ever see it again. I that's so hard to do in today's landscape of the NFL. To truly have a three-peat piece to that would be incredible just to be a part of.
I think I'm gonna float something to you. We're only gonna have one show left, and then you got to go full off season mode after that.
Mm-hmm.
But for Tuesday morning left guard for the year, and then we'll return. But I want to float a new bit here, and we'll remember it.
Okay.
Just called I'm not mad. I'm not mad. Something that everybody's mad about, and I'm just gonna say I'm not mad. And for the Super Bowl, I want you to give me one. I'll give you mine. It's Tom Brady calling it, right? Like he's the analyst.
Yes.
I think he is.
Yes.
I don't care. That's fine. I listened to him in the playoff games, and I thought it's all right. It's fine. I wasn't mad. Everybody on the line was anything he said was, oh my gosh, Brady's so dumb. He just
What an idiot.
He just, what does he know?
Doesn't know ball.
Oh, something's a cliche. Oh no, a broadcaster with a cliche on a football broadcast. And he really toned down the like, hey, you're indoors. You know, you're in a booth. He would be early on. He was like, well, I don't know, Kevin. But and he would always say, like, well, when I was throwing to J.R. Redmond out of the backfield or something, you're like, okay, you know, Kevin Falk retired a long time ago. But I think he was really fine in the playoffs. I had no problem with it. I have no feelings whatsoever. I feel the same way about Taylor Swift's music as I feel about Tom Brady. I just can't get mad at it. So there you go. What are you not mad at that people are already getting worked up about the Super Bowl?
Oh, that's a good one.
I like this for a future bit because people are just mad all the time.
They are.
They hate everything. Everything. And here, real quick. I just want people have to understand how hard it is to be a color analyst for a football game. You've done it. It is so hard. And everybody does on the internet, this Collinsworth, he like thought the safety rotated over, but I can see on the replay it's covered too. You're like, dude, you know how fast this thing's moving? Come on now.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. Not only that, you're trying to make sure, like, was that 13? Was that 14? I don't want to get his name wrong, right? Like, and you got the guy in your ear that's like, no, it was 13. You're like, panic. Gosh, I guess I'm not mad that the two best teams have made it to the Super Bowl, right? Everyone's, Philly and Kansas City. No one wants to see that again. Like, how could we want to watch this again? They're the two best teams in the NFL. They were the most healthy at the right time. They both had, one has an unbelievable run game. One has the best quarterback in the world. I'm not mad that two elite teams are meeting in the NFL in the Super Bowl. Would I have been more excited for the storyline if it was Jaden Daniels versus Patrick Mahomes? Yeah, obviously. But would it have been as good of a game? I don't think so. I think this is going to be a great game because it's two elite football teams battling it out that are familiar with each other. There's a little bit of bad blood there. Both teams have gotten better in certain positions since the last team that they met in the Super Bowl. I'm not mad that two elite teams have found their way into the Super Bowl again.
I like it. Who do you think wins?
I think Kansas City wins. I do. I think that they find a way to three-peat. Spags is going to have an interesting game plan to take away Saquon Barkley. Now, I say that everyone has tried to take away Saquon Barkley for the last 20 weeks. Hasn't worked. Can he be the one to do it? I think he might be the only defensive coordinator I would have trust in order to do it. But I do think that Mahomes does Mahomey things and ends up with a three-peat.
I haven't decided yet. I'm leaning a little toward Philly. I mean, but it's not good to pick the lesser quarterback. As great as I think Hurts is a great quarterback. Yeah. But I mean, it's not always historically a very good idea to pick the lesser quarterback. But they have the better team, the more stacked team. So yeah, Kansas City has a better coach. Most important positions, Kansas City's better. I don't know. I'll decide.
Except for the D-line. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, and that's the other piece is the drastic difference in the
Yes.
defensive philosophies,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Vic Fangio, keep everything in front of us, rush 4, let those dudes just figure it out. And then Spags is the crazy-haired mad scientist. It's like, if we bring the corner and the safety,
Yes.
and then it's all gonna
Yes.
be right. He's like the water boy coach where he's like drawing it on the board. He's like, what was I saying? Right. So it's gonna be fascinating to see which scheme ends up being the right one.
I love the coaching matchup overall, and you are right. 2 best teams, they deserve to be there. Jeremiah Sirles, can't wait to break down the Super Bowl with you and much more next week. Thank you for your time, sir, and we'll catch you all later. Football.
Football.